Fair's pretty cool in Ajax. Almost everything is done for you. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. You're not going to have to deal with, calculating percentages or anything like that, or adjusting stuff. Sending a case to a fair is one click. Recalling a case from a fair and removing all the fees, one click. So it's going to save you quite a bit of time.
In this video, we will discuss FAIR and its navigation and functionality in LJ Ajax. To begin, we'll highlight some differences between Legacy FAIR and Enhanced FAIR. For starters, Legacy FAIR is the old FAIR. This is what you would have seen on Aztec cases. Enhanced FAIR is the new FAIR that went into effect August 31st, 2018. Some of the differences include, in Legacy FAIR, there was a $35 default fee, whereas in Enhanced FAIR, there's a $49 default fee. In Legacy FAIR, the collection fee is assessed immediately once the case is assigned to FAIR. In Enhanced FAIR, those collection fees aren't assessed until 15 days after the second notice is sent. In Legacy FAIR, the defendant is responsible for paying all of their FAIR fines and fees. Whereas in Enhanced FAIR, the defendant will have what's known as the FAIR cap option. The FAIR cap option allows the defendant to have a portion of their FAIR fines and fees waived. They can have their case removed from TIP. It'll stop all notices and collection calls, and their TTAP hold will be lifted. The FAIR cap option is also available for defendants whose cases are in Legacy FAIR. Next, we'll discuss some of the FAIR access points in Ajax, as well as the FAIR activity you'll see in your CMS. The access points will include the FAIR status screen, the FAIR queue, and the FAIR events tab. FAIR activity will include marking bad addresses, adding skip traced addresses, and mailing out notices. Next, we'll talk about how to send a party to FAIR with the FAIR status screen. To find the FAIR status screen, we'll start by navigating to the Parties tab on the left trim menu within our case. Then, we'll click on the FAIR status icon on the case level ribbon. Here, we'll be able to see several different options. To begin with, we'll select our collection vendor.
Quick timeout. You don't actually have to do that anymore either. The collection vendor, since we made this video in September or something like that, they've added logic so it'll auto-assign the vendor. So basically, if the case has ever been in FAIR before, whether it's something that was sent to FAIR and then recalled, something like that, it will be Legacy FAIR. So if that case has been in FAIR once, it stays in Legacy FAIR. If it's never been in FAIR before, then it's going to automatically pick Enhanced FAIR for you. Okay? So this will come pre-filled in.
In this case, Enhanced FAIR. Then, we can click the Manually Add to FAIR icon. A message box will pop up asking if we've selected the correct vendor. We'll click Yes to continue. That party has now been sent to FAIR successfully.
All the
Parties cannot be sent.
The Legacy FAIR, if that happened to be the case, it would have added the 35 and the 19% immediately, all just from that click. If it was Enhanced FAIR, it would have had just the 49, and then some time would pass, FAIR would send notices out. After the second notice, automatically after 14 days, since they docketed the mailing of that second notice, Ajax will add in the 19.5%, also automatically. Okay? So your action is just clicking manually into FAIR.
So potentially, if they're suspended, they can come in a few days later and not have to pay other than the.
That's the purpose of it. So they increased the first fee to 49, so their default fee is higher than the 35 was, but as long as because mistakes happen, right? As long as these defendants are coming in timely and taking care of it, right? They got sent to collections, it was their bad. If they came in 2 days later, they don't have to pay that whole 19.5%. They're just responsible for the $49 and they're done. Okay? So a little bit more upfront cost, but it's a little bit more fair for those defendants that are taking care of it immediately rather than 6, 10 months, 2 years later.
To FAIR that are on an active payment contract. If that party needs to be sent to FAIR, that contract will first need to be closed. To demonstrate this, we'll begin by clicking the fare status icon and selecting our vendor. When we click the manually add to fare icon, we can see that we get an information box letting us know that at least one receivable associated with the party has an active payment contract. We will need to close out, navigate to our Payment Contracts tab in the left tree menu, open our active contract, click the Adjust Payment Contract icon, click OK to the warning message, and then change the contract status to closed. Now when we click Update, that payment contract will be closed. Now we can navigate back to the Parties tab in the left tree menu, click the Fare Status icon again, choose our vendor again, and this time when we click Manually Add to Fare, we are successfully able to send that party to fare.
So Ajax will prevent you from sending a party to fare that is current on their contract. So that means because Ajax will terminate a contract automatically after a certain amount of time passes when they've missed their payment. It's not immediately upon missed payment. There's some default processes and notices and stuff once they've missed their payment where they still have an active contract, but you haven't terminated it yet. But once Ajax terminates a contract, that's the point where it allows you to add it to fare. If the judge is like, I don't care that they're making their payments on time, send them to fare anyway, you would have to manually close the contract and then send them to fare. So that's like the kind of one-off scenario where the judge is saying do it anyway. Okay? But otherwise, Ajax is preventing you from sending it while they are still current on their contract. It's not the same in the inverse though. You can add a payment contract to a case that's in fare, no problem. You just can't send one to fare that has an active contract.
So can you take payments on a case that's in fare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ajax has the ability to close active financial ticklers for us when we send parties to fare. Here we can see 2 receivable generated ticklers with the status of active. Let's go to the Parties tab and select our party, click the Fare Status icon and select our vendor, and click the Manually Add to Fare icon. A message box will appear asking if we want to deactivate the active ticklers. Click Yes. We'll click Yes one more time to confirm the vendor. Now when we navigate back to our Ticklers tab, we can see both those ticklers were now marked as not active.
It may not seem like much, but that was actually a pretty fantastic enhancement. When we went live, very often our judge would order something to go to collections immediately because this person's in custody, they're not going to be released for a long time, like 12 other cases in fare. So the judge adjudicates sentences it and says to immediately send it to fare. So we'd go in and we'd assess the fines and fees. Every time you have a receivable created, that receivable gets a tickler. Normally when you create a payment contract, the payment contract automatically satisfies all those ticklers, changes it to no for you, because now you have a tickler for the payment contract to track instead. The way fare originally worked when my court went live is you'd send it to fare, but it wouldn't mark those receivable ticklers as yes. So the next day, they'd expire and a bunch of notices would generate, and it was just a whole bunch of extra work. So instead, we'd have to go manually update the ticklers to no after sending them to fare. So it saved us, 3-4 minutes per case when they made that enhancement. So that was very nice, and they're constantly trying to do those little things that kind of save you time there.
Recalling a party from fare in Ajax is as simple as sending a party. First, we'll navigate to the Parties tab in the left tree menu and click the Fare Status icon. Next, we'll click the Recall from Fare icon. This will remove any remaining fare fines and fees from the case, lift the TTAP hold, and stop collection efforts. It'll also docket the Recalled from Fare event to our Register of Actions. Now, let's discuss some of the additional functionalities in the Fare Status screen. First, we have the TTAP waiver checkbox. This will release the defendant's TTAP hold for a period of 30 days to allow them to get their registration. Next, we have the web IVR removal. This will remove a party's ability to pay online and will be forced to pay with cash or check. Next is the indefinite suspension checkbox, which will stop all collection efforts until it's unchecked. We have the no fare suspension checkbox. This is the default when a party is sent to fair. If it's ever unchecked, the suspension until box will open up and allow you to set a date for collection efforts to commence again.
So indefinite suspension, maybe they're filing bankruptcy and you need to cease collection efforts until it's done, you can always check that box. Suspension until maybe they're on active military duty and they know that they're gonna be deployed for 6 months. You can come in and put the suspension until date in, things like that are sort of the utility for those. Your TTEP waiver, if the judge is just saying, all right, you need a $200 payment, I'm gonna go ahead and release the TTEP hold, but it's gonna reapply. So go get your registration now, and when those expire, you better have this paid off, by that point, otherwise, you're gonna be in the same situation, kind of thing.
In addition to sending parties to fair through the fair status screen, you can also send them to fair through the fair queue. Cases will appear in the fair queue after they've gone 90 days without payment. Start by navigating to the Interfaces tab on the main menu. Then click the fair icon. This will open up our fair queue. Here we can select the case, select the vendor, and click the Send to Fair icon. Click Yes on the message box to confirm the vendor, and the party has now been sent to fair. To remove cases from the fair queue, we'll return to the queue, select the case that we want to remove, and click the Remove from Fair Queue icon. The case has now been removed from the queue. Next, we'll talk about some of the fair activity you'll see in Ajax.
Real quick on that fair queue, so cases fall into there after 90 days of no payment automatically. That doesn't mean that you have to wait 90 days to send them to fair. You would just have to go to the parties up to your menu tab, click manually enter fair, instead of seeing them pop up. So you'd have to be manually kind of keeping track of the fact that they missed their payment or whatever. Well, not really manually, but maybe you've mailed them a notice or something like that, and then they didn't come back and reply to it, and so you manually send them to fair through the case itself. But otherwise, if you happen to miss one, or if you just decided to policy to wait 90 days, you can send them when they appear in the queue. I don't remember off the top of my head what the number of days is, but there is a set number of days where fair can automatically send it to fair. It's like 180 or something like that. So if it's been in your fair queue for like an additional 90 days, I believe then at that point they can send it to fair. You can prevent that by just removing it from the fair queue. So if you specifically don't want it to go to fair, they haven't made a payment in 90 days, you see their case in the fair queue, just delete it out of there and then fair won't send it. I get this question every time, so I'll answer it before people ask. What if they don't make a payment for 90 days, but that's because they paid ahead, right? The judge allowed them to delay a payment for 6 months or something like that. It doesn't actually matter. It's 90 days of basically a non-active payment contract. So fair will not put anything in the queue, in your fair queue, that has an active payment contract. So if their contract's still active, if their next payment's not due till June, but it's active and they're not behind in their payments, it won't go to the queue. You don't have to worry about that. So you don't have to worry about reviewing those cases to see, oh, did we extend this one out or whatever. I mean, you may still want to do that just in case a clerk forgot to extend out that payment before you send them to fair, but they shouldn't be in there if they're on an active payment contract.
And that's once we put the contract into the Ajax flow.
Yes, we're talking Ajax payment contracts.
The first is the bad address checkbox. This allows the court or fair to alert the opposite of a bad address. The second is the address source of fair/skip trace. This indicates that the address has been added by fair from skip tracing.
So sometimes if you go in and you mark a bad address, fair will receive notification and they can do some skip tracing for you, or if they're receiving return to sender or something like that from their notices, they can do some skip tracing and add that address as an extra line in your system. If they mark something bad and you notice that fair has marked it as bad, you'd see that in your fair events tab. If maybe you have the ability to go to what's it called now? It was LexisNexis, one other clerk. TransUnion, thank you. You have the ability to go there and search for a new address and do skip tracing. Fair can use that new address to start sending notices to that. Two-way street there.
Finally, we have the Fair Events tab. Here we'll see any fair-related events including fair assignments, fair recalls, status changes, fees added, and other fair activity events. FairCap is a new type of payment contract that requires a down payment and is available to parties in both Legacy Fair and Enhanced Fair. A party can only begin a FairCap contract after the special collections fees are assessed. For Enhanced Fair, this means after the second notice has been sent. Cases will be put into FairCap by using the FairCap calculator, which will determine the amount of fair collection fees to be waived. Remember that all FairCap contracts require a down payment, though the down payment amount can be determined by the court. Unlike a normal payment contract, FairCap stops all collection efforts. To place a party into FairCap, we'll first navigate to the Fair Events tab and verify that the second notice has already been sent. We'll also verify that the fair special collection fee has already been added. Next, we'll navigate to the Accounting tab on the left tree menu. And we can verify here that the special collection fee receivable is on the case.
So you don't have to do all of those things if you verify in one of those ways before you do FairCap.
Back to the Accounting tab, we can see this FairCap calculator. Clicking this icon will open the calculator. Our total balance due will populate, as well as the default for a down payment. This can be modified here, or you can use the default. The FairCap savings will be calculated based on that down payment and is the amount of the special collection fees to be waived. It will also show what the new balance due will be after that down payment and those fees are waived. Clicking Receipt will open the payment receipting screen so that down payment can be receipted. Tender the payment and click Save and Close. Now that the down payment's been made, you can add a payment contract to the case. Here at the bottom, you can see an indication that this is going to create a FairCap contract. Here we can see a FairCap entry event has been added and that the case was placed on a payment contract.
So a couple of things to just kind of point out there. First of all, you may have noticed that we entered in a rank. Obviously, you don't have to do that anymore, as you've seen through class. That was another small enhancement they made. You used to have to look at what your last rank was and enter the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4. They just made it iterate. So that was a nice little time-saving thing. Also, you may have noticed that pop-up about lifting the civil traffic suspension. That's on any payment contract. So if you're putting a case onto a payment contract and there's a 55 or 58 on a civil traffic charge, Ajax will ask, do you want to lift the suspension? Yes, we'll change it to an 11 and print an abstract. No, we'll leave the suspension on there, but also put it on a payment contract. To kind of quick and dirty for what a FairCap contract does, essentially when you take that down payment, whatever the balance of that down payment is, like let's say $100, if it's the 19 or 19.5% fair, whichever one it is, fair still gets their cut of that payment. So $100, they still get their $19 of that payment, and then anything that's left of the special collection fee gets waived after the down payment. So the smaller the down payment you make them make, the more of the special collection fees gets waived really, because they're only gonna get 19% of whatever the payment is, right? You have to have a down payment in order to put them on fair cap. There isn't a rule about what that down payment is, so that'd be something the judge would usually decide on, like a set standard for your court. And like for us, it was $100 or something like that, I can't remember off the top of my head. But anything outside of the standard, the defendant would have to file a motion, and the judge would have to rule on whether or not he'd accept a lower amount or something like that. I think that was like an AO he had created. So again, you may have heard all the things that does: releases a TTAP hold, stops the notices, gets rid of the fees, removes them from tip. All these things happen when you put them in fair cap. And then if they default on fair cap, then all those things just come back. But they never actually leave fair in this instance. Okay? So it's not like we're calling them from fair to remove the penalties. They stay in fair, and then they just, all the penalties come back once they start paying.
Okay.
Yes.
As long as they stay current on that, then they never have to do the annual TTAP release.
TTAP's released and tip,
Permanently.
and no tip either. Yep, as long as we're staying.
Okay. And then as far as the suspension lift goes, is that something, like how quickly does that normally happen? Like is it like that night when that?
Yeah,
It's
so
down on it.
dispositions report to MVD overnight.
Okay.
There are some kind of funny exceptions where it's faster involving fair if they pay online. Like AZ Corp Pay, for example, technically goes through a vendor called Conduit, and that vendor notifies Ajax of the payment, and they push it through, but they also notify MVD immediately. So instead of Ajax being the one to notify MVD, it's like Conduit reports both ways. So like if they have a TTAP hold, and they pay it off online through AZ Corp Pay, it can be released within like 10 minutes. Only if it's on AZ Corp Pay though. Ajax reports its everything to MVD overnight. So if they come in and make their payments, stuff like that, it's going to be next business day. Because it's a nightly job that transmits it. So if someone comes in and they have a, let's say, suspension, and they pay off their case in full, you can let them know that they're able to go renew their driver's license the next day.
Or you just give them the abstract that prints out.
The alternative is you just give them the abstract if they want to go same day. Keep in mind that some courts decide not to have the abstract auto pop up because most of the time they're not giving it to their defendants immediately. They have it go to their demand batch queue. So if your court is one of the ones that don't want it to pop up every time, then you're going to have to do that extra step of going to your queue, checking it, and hitting print. So it's not that much of an extra step, but it would be an extra step. You may just want to get in the habit of letting them know that they can get their license back the next day, unless of course they're adamant that they want to go immediately to MVD. Also keep in mind that when you're doing like vacating assessments, like set-asides and stuff, with those abstracts that auto-populate, they only have the last disposition code on them. So if someone had a 58 and the judge is saying that he's going to be 0-0ing that because it was a clerical error, or 59ing it because he's setting it aside, and then putting in the 11 because they're pleading to it, you want to make sure that you're putting on the whole, you need to type in the rest of it, right? So you do 50, all it would be on there is 11, so you go behind it and you do your 0-0, or so your 58, 0-0, 11. Or if he's dismissing it, 58, 59, 43, whatever. If you just send a 43, then it looks like you're overlaying a 58 on MVD's end with a 43, which is going to be an issue, right? So if you're dealing with 00s and 59s, you have to type in the rest of that dispo history on the form that pops up. Just like you would normally write it out with your abstracts now. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Ajax doesn't do that part of it for you. You'll just see the 11. Okay? Or you just let it go overnight and it'll send it off.
So what happens when a defendant fails to honor their fair cap contract? Well, first, the clerk will close the fair cap contract. The collection status will be reactivated. The special collection fee is reassessed to the case, and collections resume at the place they stopped. Now, what if the judge decides to give the defendant a second chance at fair cap? clerk would just need to follow the same steps as before to re-enter a new fair cap contract. The collection status will be turned back off. Collection activity is suspended again. And the special collection fee is suspended again. Recalling a party from fair that currently has a fair cap contract will require a few extra steps. First, the clerk will docket the fair cap court recall event. Then they will close the contract. The special collections fee will be reassessed. Then the clerk can use the recall from fair icon.
So normally to recall from fair, we just click recall from fair. So if they're on a fair cap contract, you just kind of have to work backwards. So first close the contract, and then you're going to docket one event, that fair cap recall, just from your ROA, click add, docket the one event. And what that'll do is put all the money that had gotten suspended off the case back on the case, so that you can then click recall from fair, and it'll correctly remove all that money again back off the case.
Ajax includes a number of reports to track your fair cap. First is the fair cap completion with balance report. This report displays fair cap cases with a fair cap completion event and a balance out. Since fair cap cases that are completed, meaning their payment plan was satisfied, shouldn't have balances, this is an error report. We recommend courts run this report on a regular basis, then investigate any cases found. If a court ever has cases listed, contact the AOC with this information as soon as possible.
This one and the last one we'll talk about how
Date range. This report has a start and end date entered by the user. This will display various statistics for that time period for the court. Data points that are underlined are linked that can be selected. Click the link and a detailed report will then appear for that data point. The fair cap inception to end date report has only an end date entered by the user. This report shows cumulative data for fair cap cases since fair cap was started at the court. Just like the date range report, data points that are underlined are links that can be selected, and a detailed report will then appear for that data point.
Those two middle reports are to kind of help you determine the efficacy of your fair cap.
The fair cap with no initial payment report is another error report that will display cases that entered into fair cap without an initial payment. This report should always be empty and no records found. If a court ever has cases listed, please contact the AOC Support Center with this information as soon as possible. Some ad hoc reporting can also be done through the general search screen. We'll first click on the Events tab. Next, we'll move down to the Events category drop-down box and search for Fair. In the Event Type drop-down box, we can see all of the Fair events, and in this case, we'll look for the Assigned to Fair event. We can also fill in an event date from and to range, so that we can determine how many cases were assigned to fair within that range. Our search results display below, and we can see 54 records were found, which means 54 cases were assigned to fair within that time period. Now it's your turn to practice.
All right, let's all pull up our Boodram cases. It's going to